Liberal international theory is in many respects a response to realism. And so to begin thinking about liberalism, we start with a realist concept and a question. Is the security dilemma really inescapable? That's the question liberals ask to begin their critique of realism. So for realism, of course, the security dilemma is inescapable, and they say it's pretty dangerous to try to escape it. But liberalism is going to challenge this on both theoretical and empirical grounds. And again, by empirical, I just mean with evidence from the real world. So the theoretical challenge is this, is if actors are rational and self-interested, like realism says, why can't they manage to solve the security dilemma? Right? It shouldn't be that hard. If you think about how dangerous war is, how costly war is, how costly trade wars are, and so on, you would think that rational, self-interested actors could figure out ways to cooperate to avoid those things. And so liberalism is pretty skeptical that that's not possible. And a key point here that's often missed by undergraduates on exams is liberals do not assume that states are altruistic or that they trust each other or that they're nice or naive. They assume rational self-interest, but they say that that rational self-interest gives them a lot of reason to want to solve the security dilemma, or at least mitigate the security dilemma. So they say that rational self-interest leads in the security dilemma to a different endpoint than realism does. The empirical challenge is this. You look around the world, there's lots of cooperation. And liberals say realism just can't explain this. There's the European Union, there's the World Trade Organization, there are all these arms control treaties, and so on and so forth, right? Zillions of agreements, lots of international organizations, cooperation all over the place. That, liberals say, is a sign that whatever realism is saying is not quite getting it right. Moreover, for many potential adversaries, the security dilemma seems to be fairly easily solved. So think about the US and Canada. Until the late 19th century, most of the US international war plans or sort of preparations were for a war with Canada. But today, and this has been true for a century now, war between the United States and Canada is unthinkable, and that is really the longest unguarded border in the world. Germany and France is another interesting case. They fought three big important wars between 1870 and 1945, right? So over 75 years, they went to war 3 times. And again, today, that border is unguarded. You can cross that border without even having to show your passport. War between those 2 countries is unthinkable. So this kind of thing, the liberals will look at and use as evidence to say the security dilemma is obviously not as hard to address as realists say. So what do we mean then by international liberalism? It's basically the arguments that the effects of anarchy can be mitigated by reaching agreements and by creating institutions to help enforce and carry out those agreements. Now, we need to note then, and this is a really important point, that this has almost nothing to do with the way that we use the term liberal in US domestic politics, or in political theory for that matter. In political theory, Hobbes, and Hobbes actually was a prominent realist or precursor of realist international theory, Hobbes said if you don't want anarchy, chaos in England, right, in the 17th century, if you don't want that, you've got to have autocracy, right? You've got to have a strong monarch because that's the only alternative. Strong monarchy or chaos. John Locke came along and said, no, there's another choice, right? You can have democracy, right? And in political theory, liberalism is somewhat synonymous with democracy. And so that's really what liberalism means in the international theory sense. It's the sense that, wait a second, states can come together as citizens do in a democracy and create agreements and create rules so that they can have a better choice than either anarchy or autocracy, which would mean some kind of global empire. So, question for now, as we dig into liberalism, is, so far at least, how convincing is this liberal challenge?